think we should actually talk about the classifications first before we go into like different types of pre-market submissions. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree. So, as far as the FDA goes, there are three classifications of device. It's class one, two, and three. We see class one as a low risk device, and that is just subject to general concerns. An example of a class one device would just be a bandage or maybe a scalpel. These are things where we don't have to be applying the same considerations to maybe another device. Class
Well,
two is going to be,
there's no cybersecurity risk with a scalpel, right? It's an instrument.
yeah, that's correct. Oftentimes, cybersecurity risk sort of will introduce a higher level of risk. Class two is a little bit higher level of risk. An example of that could be a wheelchair, for an example. If a wheelchair has a computer component and that can be compromised, so let's say you're able
Like
to
a
make
powered wheelchair, not a manual wheelchair, right?
Yeah, just any wheelchair with a computer component or just an equivalent device. If you can compromise that wheelchair, someone hacks into it and they're able to crank the speed up or cause it to randomly just break in the middle of moving. That
How fast could they crank the speed up in a wheelchair, you think?
Honestly, that's a pretty good question. I mean, I'm thinking for reference, like one of those electric go-karts, those things can go about 60 miles. So I bet if you really were able to modify the firmware of a wheelchair, you could make it go pretty fast.
Huh. Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at the lake, and there's a trail here, and I see people go by in wheelchairs every now and then. I imagine, I guess, if you could speed that thing up and you could run someone off into the lake, they might drown.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be another
I just thought about
example.
that
Just
scenario where you're
redirect
talking about it,
Yeah. Well, now you got me thinking, how fast can you race a wheelchair? Huh.
I don't know.
Well, regardless, there's still definitely a level of threat there. A class 3 device is the ultimate level of harm. That's like a surgical robot, where a compromise of the device is effectively can lead to patient death. That's the most stringent controls, the most stringent considerations, and there's a lot of concern around there. Anytime there can be a massive breach of patient data, so let's say medical records, widespread medical records get leaked, or patient death, severe injury. Like with a medical robot, someone can get killed pretty easily, or someone can become disabled from a result of mistreatment with a surgical device. So there can be a lot of real risk with a class 3 device.
Yeah, and that's like an implantable defib device is a class 3 as well. High risk, like you said.
Right.
So that device is compromised. You could kill somebody. I remember we were dealing with a client recently, and it's kind of interesting. We always look at risk matrices, and they wanted the highest risk in there to be severe. And I was like, well, and somebody could die as a result of hacking in this device. And they wanted catastrophic taken off there and severe putting in there. And I'm like, it's pretty catastrophic if somebody dies, isn't it? They're like, oh, no, we think that's severe. I just thought the whole conversation was so bizarre. I'm like, if I die, it's kind of catastrophic. Maybe not for me, because I won't be around anymore, but maybe for my family, they'll be like, man, that was severe. It wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah, I'm picturing, someone gets like misdiagnosed or dies as a result. Someone says, was that a catastrophe? No, that wasn't a catastrophe. It was a big deal, but it wasn't a catastrophe.
Yeah, so class 3, I think we're dealing with, catastrophic results if the worst case scenario happens.